Cool. Hi, everyone. Welcome to session number 8 of Dev Labs with me. Right. Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay, so just to give you, let me open this up. All right, so just to explain what we did last time, we talked about REST APIs. You know, we understood that the REST APIs have like different methods called get, post, put. There's something called put, and then there's another one called delete. So things like that, and we use CRUD to create a small CRUD. You know what CRUD means? It's create, read, update, and delete. Yeah. Okay, so my idea is to let's do something like this. So we can use CRUD to create just one, just one API, which can hold just, if you imagine a database, it can hold just one data point, which consists of a JSON. So let's try to use some sort of schema so that it contains some information. Let's start the very the most basic thing. And by using Unity, right? Unity will do a small polling system. Like pollings are not like polling means it's not a great implementation, but polling is something that we can use to get information from an external service by polling. Polling means like Unity will be sending a request, let's say every 1 minute, every 1 minute or maybe every 5 seconds or whatever. So every 5 seconds, Unity will be sending a request, and the server will give you a response, and based on that, Unity will update. So let's do something like that. Polling is not that great if you want to, if you want to do something like this. Usually for this, we use something called sockets. I don't have much experience with sockets, but that's a talk for another day. Let's use a REST API to bring things, to request things from an external server, so that we can create something something useful. Okay, so I'm going to go to crudcrud.com. You can follow along with me. You can create your own version of this, right? crud.com. All right, so this is my new endpoint. I'm going to take a copy of this, and I'm going to remove everything. Okay, so this is just for testing, right? I think if you don't have Postman, please install Postman, this Postman application, because we're going to be using this, right? If you don't have Postman, don't worry, you can use my link when we open up Unity, and when we build the actual implementation in Unity, because we talked about this last time. So this is nothing new. We're going to be manipulating the data points using Postman, and we're going to get the response from Unity. Cool. All right. So if you get it, you can see that it responds with, with an empty array. I'm going to use a post method from here, and I'm going to create what is it? I'm going to create, I'm just going to call it info, right? So this is my API, this is my host /info, right? And as for the body, let me increase the size of this. /info. For the body, I'm going to use row. And from here, I'm going to choose JSON. And there you go. And here, I'm going to give. So this is what I'm going to do. So okay. So I'm going to create a Unity scene. And the Unity scene will have a sphere, a cube, right? A sphere, a cube, and maybe a cylinder, right? So these three will have their own materials. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a JSON, right? So sphere will have its color, which is, let's say, you know, I'm going to choose a hex color. So the hex color would be something like this: 1, 2, 6, 4, 5, 1, 2, something like this. And then the box, so it has its own color, and the cylinder. Right? Does this make sense? Does it make sense? Oh, let me open up the chat. Okay, your indicators headers 9, mine shows 5. Yeah, that's fine. Your headers, that's okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to create just one, you know, just one entry, and when we create the entry, we will get the ID of that entry. So using Unity, we are going to use that ID to get that information, right? So before moving to Unity, let's just configure this, and let's just use it. I think with Unity, we can change the color using a hex code. Unity change color hex. I couldn't remember whether we can use hex colors. Yeah, hex colors. Yeah, it's a little bit challenging. Maybe I think it's better if we can. Yeah, you know what? We can create a new color variable. So I think that's gonna be cool, because that way we can create like we can create an RGB color properly, just like this. So let's do it. So this is what I'm gonna do. In my post method, I'm gonna create the first key, which is the sphere, right? So this is the sphere. And as for the sphere, I'm gonna give, I'm gonna open up another JSON inside of this, right? So sphere, open up another JSON like this. So this is called like nested JSONs, right? So this is the main JSON, and inside of this, we have the sphere and another key. So this is going to be red, and I'm going to give an integer value, 34, red, comma, and then green. So green, maybe 10, and then another one, blue. So, okay, so let's focus on the sphere, right? Only the sphere, there's nothing else, just the sphere. Okay, because otherwise this is going to be a little bit, you know, it's going to be bigger. So let's focus only on the sphere. Does this make sense? Is it all good? Like anything, is there anything confusing? So what I did here is that I created one data point for a sphere, and inside the sphere, we have red, green, blue values, right? If we want, we can create something like this. So inside the sphere, we can have another JSON, which is not this, but another JSON, another key called color, and then we can put it inside. So it's, you know, it's gonna be the hierarchy is gonna be bigger. So I'm just gonna stick with this for now, because we can always modify this, right? Okay, and I'm going to send it. And now this is what I have, right? You can see that we have an identifier. So in Unity, what do the numbers represent? The RGB values. Exactly. See, red, green, blue. R34, green 10, blue 20. I think In Unity, we can, yeah, in Unity, the colors go from 0 to 255. So 255, 255, 255 means that is white. 000 means that is black. 51 is alpha. Yeah, it's alpha, but we're not going to be using alpha for this. We're going to be creating a color like this, which can use RGB components. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to open up Unity. So while, okay, let's just create a new project. I'm going to create a new project. Oops. Okay, I can use URP if I want, but you know, I'm just going to use standard 3D. I'm going to change the use the dev lab 8, and I'm going to create a project. Because while it's opening up, so this is what we have, right? So this is my post method, and I just send this information, and it has created this one. So I'm not going to be creating another post, because I'm going to be using only this, right? I click send, but I don't see values in the lower part. Do you see something called 201? So, you know, just do this. Create a new tab. You know, make sure that it is get, right? And over here, just type /info and send this again and see what you get at the bottom. So for me, I can see that it lists down an array of information, and I can see this first information right there. If I go to my CRUD, so this is my CRUD. If I go to my dashboard, I should be able to see. Let me just copy this. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it here. Yeah, there you go. So I have like 2 requests, and I have 1 resource, which is the info, and it's this one. Cool. You know, you can even see it over here as well. If you don't see it, just paste the link here /info, and you'll get something like this. You can see this is the first identifier, and then we have sphere, red, green, and blue. So if you want to change this, you know what to do. Like, sorry, if you want to get only this value, right? Only this value, what you need to do is you need to copy this ID, and after info, you know, just type another / and paste it and hit send. So now instead of getting an array, you'll be getting just 1 JSON. Like earlier, without this, you got the whole list of information, right? So it's a get method, and you can see that it's a list, right? It's an array right here. But this one, it is now narrowed down specifically for this. Cool. Okay. Right. So this is what we're going to be doing now. I'm going to create a sphere, and I'm going to create a way so that I can send a web request and talk to the API, get that value, and change the color, right? Okay, so first of all, I'm going to create a sphere in the middle of this. 3D object, sphere, 0, 0, 0. Here we go. And I'm going to create a couple of materials. The first material is going to be the sphere material, and I'm just going to add it to this. And the other one, I think, you know, I'm going to create a skybox. So material, sky, and I'm going to change the shader of this to skybox, cube map. Ta-da. So I have just 1 color right there. Okay, so the idea is that we're going to change the color of this using the color that we get from the API. So I'm going to create a new folder and I'm going to create a new C# script. Okay, so inside of this, I'm going to create a new C# script and I'm going to call it color loader. Color. Okay, I'm not sure whether you can see this. Just give me a second. I'm going to okay, hold on. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Okay, everything is a little bit bigger now. Okay. Color loader, and I'm going to open this up. Okay, let me know if you are like, if you have fallen behind. Eli, like, were you able to get the values when you send get method? Do you get the values that you posted before? Awesome. Okay, so so how to send a web request? So natively, Unity supports sending web requests. Because you're using C#, there are like ways that you can use different ways of sending web requests rather than using Unity web requests. But Unity supports this, and it's easier. It's it's more optimized for Unity, so we can easily use that, right? So over here, I'm going to say using Unity engine dot networking. Okay, so this allows us to use all of these methods. Cool. Right. So, sending a web request it should not happen in the main thread. So what does it mean by it should not happen in the main thread? So as an example, so this is what we're going to be doing. So if this is my Unity project, right? So somehow my Unity project started in the play mode and it's running. Now my Unity project is running. And all of a sudden, I send a web request to the cloud. Right? So this is something that takes time, right? Your cloud, you send this to the cloud and the cloud does the processing. It finds all the information from the database and then it responds back, right? So we send a web request, we take it back, and then we can, move forward. Then the Unity project will run. Now there's a problem here, right? The problem here is that in between this period, your Unity project should not crash, or like, basically when you send a request and while you are waiting to get the response back, the rest of the project should run, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to create a parallel process out of this. So from here, we're going to be running the Unity application, but over here, we're going to start a new parallel process to send a web request to the cloud. And we're going to wait, the parallel process will wait. And once that is done, it will send the response back to the main thread, right? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a new, there is a word for that. What can, who can tell that word? We are running this, but we need to open up new branch. No, this is not GitHub. This is not GitHub. Yeah, it's similar to a branch, right? Similar to a branch, but you might have heard of this before. During the classes, you might have heard of this before. We're going to send something, right? And we need to wait for something. We need to wait for something, and then we need to wait. And then, once that is done, then we can continue. So we can create a new coroutine. Does that make sense? Have you heard of coroutines before? Right? Of course, right? So we need to create a new coroutine. A coroutine will be able to create a new parallel process, send that request to the server, wait until it responds, and as soon as the response is taken back, it can, do anything. It can do anything. And then once that is done, the coroutine can be stopped. Okay. So what do we need to run a coroutine? Like, do we need a void method? Do we need a Boolean method? What do we need for to run a coroutine? IEnumerator, exactly, right? Okay, so what we're going to do here is that we're going to create a new IEnumerator, right? Over here, we're going to create a new IEnumerator, and I'm going to give a name for this. I'm just going to give it load colors. Load colors, open and close, and then create new curly brackets. Okay, so now you can see that it has an error. So, usually what we do is we just say yield return new wait for seconds, and then we give the number of seconds that we need to wait. But we're not waiting 1 second. We need to wait until something returns to us, right? So rather than this, rather than yield return new wait for seconds, we're going to do something else. I'll show you what we do, right? But before that, we need to create a request, and we need to send that off, right? So first of all, we're going to be creating a new Unity web request, right? So to do that, I'm just going to type Unity web request. There you go. So this is a part of Unity Engine.networking. So if you don't have Unity Engine.networking used at the beginning, you'll not be able to see this. Make sure that you import Unity Engine.networking. Unity web request. And we are going to give a name for this. I'm going to give www. So that's very easy. So usually in Unity, before Unity web request, there used to be something called www. And now it's like changed to Unity web request. But this is just a name, right? You can just give anything that you like. I'm just going to give www equals new Unity web request, right? So this is something that we can do, or there's another way that we can do Unity. So basically what we have done here is that we've created a Unity web request, right? So if you, so once, because we have created this Unity web request, what we can do is we can just say www dot, it's not a website, right? It's not a website, but, just call this www dot. And now you can see we have we have a set of parameters right here, right? Get hash code, get request header, send web request. That's a lot. But the way that we need to use this is something, it's a little bit different. Rather than using it, in this way, we're going to be using it in a new way. So I'm going to delete this. And I'm going to say using, right? So you can see that this is a using statement. You might have not used this before. This is pretty much similar to an if condition, but rather than an if condition, we are kind of like using the Unity web request, right? So just type using, right? Using, open parentheses, and here we're going to call the Unity web request, right? Using Unity web request. Right. So I'm going to give www as the name equals. So rather than saying new Unity web request, instead of that, we're going to say Unity web request dot. So now you can see that this is kind of like a static class. We have some static methods. Over here, you can see all of the methods that we can use. Delete equals, these are not these are not methods, but you can see get. And then we have post, put. We don't have delete, right? We don't have delete. Oh yeah, we have delete. So it's post, get, put, delete. So those four are like, available for us by default. So here we're just going to be using get unity web request.get, open parentheses, and now here you can see we can send a URI, right? So a URI is always a string. So I'm just going to give space for a string for the moment. And right after this, just like an if condition, I can open and close my curly bracket. So basically what happens here is that this is just a code block, and this code block will use the Unity web request. And so there is no return types or anything. This doesn't have a value or anything. Basically what happens here is that, the code block that is inside of this will use this Unity web request. But before doing that, it will, create this Unity web request by default. Okay, it might be a little bit confusing to understand. Basically what happens here is that, you create a Unity web request, this is it. And whatever happens inside of this uses the web request that we just created. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to send this web request, right? So what we do here is that we just say yield return www.send web request. There we go. Okay, so so this is how we send the web request, and you can see that we have yield return www. blah blah blah. So that means it sends the web request and it waits until the response comes, right? So that is why we put it in an IEnumerator. So basically yield return means like, you wait until it comes back. And this is what you do. If you start from here, that's going to be easier to understand. You send the web request and then you wait until it comes back. It responds back. Okay. Now what we need to do is, now, once we do that, all right, awesome, Eli. Okay, so once we do that, now we have some values to www, right? So what we're going to do is we are going to use something called the download handler to get the values, right? So here we're going to say if, now we can have an if condition. We can say www dot. All right, bye, Sonia. Right, so we're going to say www dot. So there are some things that we can use. You can see we have something called error, is done, is error. So we can use this to recognize if we have any errors or anything in our code. If you have any errors, then we can handle them, right? Because sometimes, there can be network issues. You can see that we have different errors. See, HTTP errors, network errors, like, we have something called error. If www.error, what is it called, equals, so we can check our errors using this. You can see that it is like it's an error variable, right? So we can check for errors, or if not, we can just say no, I'm not checking for errors now. I'm just using the the download handler. I'm just going to say debug.log www.downloadhandler.text. That's it, right? So this is like the most simplest way. I think, Jason, it's just you and me. All right, this is cool. Awesome. Anyway, so what we do is, I'm just going to say, I'm just going to send the web request, wait for the result, and just print it out. So let's see how we can, let's see how this works. But it doesn't work by default. We have to send the request link right here. So I'm just going to go to Postman, and I'm going to copy this one because I need this. And so I'm going to copy this whole thing, and I'm going to put it right here. Okay, so using Unity web request, www. So this is the link. and it sends the web request. It just prints whatever that is in the web request. Okay, so I'm just going to call it in my start method over here. I'm just going to say start coroutine. Within parentheses, I'm going to say load colors. There you go. So we basically start the coroutine, and the coroutine itself will create a new web request, sends it, and takes it back, and takes the result back. So let's test this. I'm going to go back to Unity. All right. So I'm going to create an empty game object. Maybe I can call this network manager. I'm just going to drag and drop it over here. I'm going to open up the console, and I'm going to click play. And there you go. Right. So it's that simple. You can see that we sent the web request, and once the web request is done, you can see the JSON, right? So this is really cool. So now what we're going to do is, because we have the JSON response, we can call, we can create a JSON serialization so that we can convert that JSON into an actual C# class, right? So to do that, I'm going to create a new C# class so that it can match this JSON formula right here, right? So you can see that we have something called sphere, and the sphere has red, green, and blue, right? And the sphere is also a part of another JSON, which has an ID and the sphere, right? So we need to match this, and we're going to create a serializable class so that we can convert this JSON into a serialized format, right? Okay. So to do that, I'm going to go back to Unity. I'm going to create a new C# script. Right click, create C# script. I'm going to call this response data. Response data. Response data. Open up. So this is going to be a class. It's going to be a combination of classes. I'm going to remove everything. I removed all the using clauses. I'm going to remove this inheritance, this mono behavior thing. And I'm going to remove this as well. And here, I'm going to say system.serializable. So now this class is, we can use this very simple class to serialize our response data. So if you look at the Postman, if you look at right here, inside of this, so imagine this response data as the base class, right? It's the base class of our data point. So in our data, inside of this, we have the identifier, and then we have the sphere, right? So sphere is another, it's another data type right here because it has its own content. So I'm going to create another public class. So this is also going to be a system.serializable. And this is going to be public class. I'm just going to call it sphere. Or maybe I can just call it model. I don't want this to be specific for a 3D sphere because I should be able to use this multiple times. So I'm just going to call it model, open, close. All right, so if you go to the model, you can see here we have 3 values, the red, green, and the blue. So we can use this and we can create 2 serialized public variables. So inside my model, I'm just going to create public string. So this needs to be public, right? Otherwise, we will not be able to serialize this. Public string, red. Oh, sorry, it's not a string, my bad. It's public int. Because right here, we know that this is a number. Red, green, blue, all of these 3 are numbers. So public int red, semicolon, public int green, and the public int blue, red, green, blue. Okay, so now inside the response data, we have a model which is named as sphere, right? So right here, we have the identifier, which is a string, and then we have a model which is named as sphere. So first of all, I'm going to just use this ID, just going to call it public string underscore ID. And the second one is public model, right? So you have access to model because it's right over here, public access model. And as for the name, I'm just going to give sphere. So these names should be identical to what we're going to use, what we're getting over here. Okay. And I'm going to save my response data class. It's not actually a single class. Even if it has a response data class, it has like two classes. One is the model and one is this. Okay, now we have two serializable classes. We are going to convert our JSON into one of these objects, right? So we know, if you go to Unity, you can see that we've already, we already received that response using the get keyword. We have the JSON. Basically, what we're going to do is we are going to deserialize this JSON into the 3D model, into the object. Okay, so it's very easy. Let me just open up my color loader. Right, this is what we have here. So of course, we debug.log. Maybe we can debug.log before using this. Sorry, before sending this web request, saying that, sending the request. And then right after that, we receive the response. Then we need to create a new response data. So over here, I'm going to create a new object of response data. Just going to call it response data, right? It's the same name that we use here, response data. I'm going to give a name, just data would be fine, equals. Now I'm going to call the JSON utility, right? JSON utility dot from JSON, right? So because this is from JSON, I need to cast this to a data type. The data type is the one that we created, response data, right? And I'm going to give a name, right? JSON utility from JSON response data. And inside of this, I need to give the string, right? So the string right here is going to be www.downloadhandler.text. Okay, so you might wonder what's actually happening here, right? So let me just draw this in my whiteboard, and I'm going to explain this. Okay. So this is our JSON. So here we have an ID. Blah, 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 blah. And then we have the sphere. Inside of this, we have three values, which is red, a number, green, again a number, and blue, again a number. Then we close this. We don't have a comma here, and then we close this as well. Okay, so this whole thing is a string, right? So this whole thing is a string. So what we do is, imagine that we have a machine which is known as JSON utility, right? We input this string as the input, right? So now what it does is the JSON utility will try to deconstruct the JSON, right? So we have the ID sphere, red, green, blue, blah, blah, blah. What it does here is that it checks something called response model, response data. Right? So over here, if you can see, we just casted it to response data. So JSON utility will convert a string like this to response data, right? So what we did here is that we created a new game object, sorry, not game object, we created a new instance of response data. So response data here is a class, you know, like object-oriented programming, everything is a class. We use a class as a blueprint, and then using a blueprint, we create a new game object. So what it has done here is that we, using this blueprint, we created an empty response data object, which consists of the ID and the sphere. So right here, you can see that we created response data. That means we, over here, we just created an empty object, and the value of that empty object is passed by the JSON utility, right? So over here, we create a response data. I'm just going to, use a sphere as it. Inside of this, we have ID, and then we have another one, which is the sphere, right? So whenever we create a new response data instance, it will automatically, the JSON, the JSON utility will automatically create a sphere object for us and assign it to this, right? Might be a little bit confusing to understand. Basically, imagine that the JSON utility will assign values into this new response data variable, right? So we already give a name. We already gave a name for this, which is called data. And right after the JSON utility done its job, now we can access to all of these values, right? So now if I go back here, right, I can individually access these values. So I'm going to use debug.log, and look what we can do, right? Debug.log right here, instead of just calling this, I'm going to access this data value, data dot, look what we have here. We have access to something called ID and the sphere. This is amazing, right? If I access the sphere dot, I can get red, green, blue values. So what we did here is that whatever the value that, whatever the JSON that we get from the response, as the response, we converted this JSON into an object. So right now, it's not a string anymore. It's an object with different variables as values. So now we can use these values to manipulate things, right? So if I just say data.sphere.red, right, look at this. I'm going to click play here in Unity. We're going to click play. Send in the request, right? Send in the request. You can see that we got the response. And now you can see that we kind of, isolated the red value. Hi, David. Good morning. Cool. We have a small class today. All right, cool. Anyway, okay. So any questions on this? Anything that is confusing? I want you to learn, I want you to learn the whole concept behind this, because it can be very challenging if you want to understand this. I'm gonna use this. I'm gonna use an array as well, so that I can show you how to manipulate, how to populate things based on this. But this is the very first implementation, right?
Indika, can we go
Yes.
back to the coding again, the C# script, and then the www.downloaderhandler.txt. How did you get that again?
Yes.
Get
so
that part.
yeah. So Unity web request, so this is I just gave a name called www. You can give any name, right? So this can be www, or this can be web request or anything. It can be a name because it's a parameter. So there's nothing called www. I just use this name because it's easy to understand. So usually this www is a Unity web request. A Unity web request has its own own methods like this, and it has some variables which consist of values. So what happens here is that when we send the Unity web request, we sent the web request, and as soon as we receive the response is assigned to a variable called download handler, right? Okay, so www.downloadhandler.text means whatever the response that we get.
So download
Okay.
handler is a variable that's given from.
Yeah, it's a variable that is inside inside a Unity web request, and inside of the www, you can see that this is a download handler variable, right? You can see, and download handler has many stuff, right? It has access to error variables. It has access to some properties called whether it is done or not, and then text means returns the bytes from data interpreted as a string, and it's read only. Basically, it just shows you the data that we received as a text. So that is a string that we get, or we can just get it as a byte array. So this is not going to work for us. We need this as a string, so that is why I use text. So this way you'll be able to get exactly this as a string. So that is what happened right here. See, you can see that this is a JSON. This is a string which just got printed, and then we just deconstructed it and we isolated number 34. You can see here the value for it. Does that make sense? Awesome. Okay. So, right. So this is like the very basic of sending a web request and retrieving the value, and then using this. So, if your download handler.text is not equal to this structure, right? If the JSON right here is not equal to this structure, then it will not create like values just like this. Instead, it will just create an empty object with empty values, which might not work, right? So it needs to be identical. The variables that are in this needs to be identical if this download handler.text is a JSON. Even like, if this is not a JSON from here, still you'll get some errors because it cannot deconstruct it properly, right? So this needs to be a JSON, and the JSON schema, we call that the schema, should be exactly similar to the schema of this response data object, right? You can see here, now it is very much similar. ID, sphere, red, green, blue. If you go response data, you can see ID, sphere, red, green, blue. Cool. Okay, so now it's the time for us to use these values. So over here, yeah. Okay.
Okay, quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So if our postman in our post, if we had the ID at the bottom, then we would have.
That's fine.
It doesn't matter. It's still going to pull it because it's still in the same format, right?
Exactly. It doesn't matter. You can even, you can change the orientation over here like this. Okay. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The hierarchy matter. Hierarchy matters. If you put this ID into model, then that's not going to work, right? That makes sense, right? If you just.
Yeah, no, I get that. The nested function of our JSON format has to still follow the flow that the public class model and the response data are differentiating the nested aspect. I get that.
Exactly. So this, sphere and ID can like swap its places, but that's fine as long as the hierarchy is there. Okay, cool. Right. So now over here, this is where I'm going to manipulate these values and change the color of the sphere. So I'm going to create a variable here for my sphere. So this is going to be a material, right? So I'm going to say public material. Oh no, sorry, public mesh renderer. I'm going to call this sphere. Public mesh renderer sphere. All right. Okay, so now what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to create a new color out of the color values that we got from the API. and I'm going to assign that color to my sphere, right? So here I'm going to say color. I'm just going to call it sphere color equals new color, open parentheses. Now you can see that we can create a color using RGB values. So RGB values we can get from data. So I'm just going to say data dot sphere dot red, and then comma data dot sphere dot green, comma. The third one is data dot sphere dot blue. Great. So we got these three values from the network, right? Red value, green value, and blue values we got from the network. We use those two integer values to create a new color, and then we assign that to a new color variable called sphere color. So now what we're going to do is we're going to talk to this mesh renderer, which is known as the sphere. Over here, I'm going to say sphere dot material dot color equals sphere color. That's it, right? So this is amazing, right? Sphere dot material dot color, sphere color. Okay, so now if I go to this here, I can see the sphere. I can stop this, stop playing. Let me change the orientation of this to align with the view, so that way I can see the sphere in the middle. All right, so now let's see how this works. So this is the code. I'm just gonna copy the whole code, only the inside of this, only the last part of this. I'm gonna copy it in the chat. All right, so here I'm going to select my network manager, and you can see that this is requesting a sphere. I need to assign the sphere, other than, if we do, if not, this will not change the color of the sphere. So I'm going to drag and drop the mesh renderer of this. And now I'm going to play. Send in a web request, Okay, just plain white. Why is it plain white? That's strange. 34, 10, 20. That's pretty strange. Sphere instance, material. Oh, what is this? Okay, hold on. I think, how do we actually get the color? Okay. Constructs a new color with given RGB components and set to a 1. And it's a float. Yeah, I thought this creates colors from 0 to 255. Let me just try a small value like 1 and 1 and 1. Oh, I think this is a color. Okay, I think this is a value that goes in between 0 and 1, rather than rather than 0 to 255. So what we can do here is that I can divide this by 255. I can divide this by 255, and I can divide this by 255, but I need to cast this as a float variable. Otherwise, this wouldn't work. I'm going to just say 255.0 f 255.0 f 255.0 f, and let's see whether this works. Aha, there you go. Okay, so my bad. The issue was I thought that this is going to be a value. The color of this is going to be a value in between 0 and 1. But from the API, I assume that it's going to be in between 0 and 255. but actually it's a value that goes between 0 and 1. So what I did was I just divided this by 255. So if I put 255, 255, and 255 to all of these three values, the value of this is going to be 1 by 1 by 1, which is of course 0. Sorry, white. So now what we're going to do is we're going to change the color from here. So instead of 34, maybe, let's get a color wheel and see if we can get some different colors. Okay. All right, so there you go. We have a color wheel right here. Maybe we can choose color like this. Okay, 34, 213, 207. 34, 213, and 207. Oh, cool. This is a coincidence. 34. G is 213. Oh, sorry, my bad. I cannot change these values because I need to now update these values using a put method, right? So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it here. Let me get a duplicate of this. All right, so this is going to be a put method. And the link should be this. Now the body, so here I can change the values. Right, 34, 10, and 20. I'm going to change the color to 34, 213, and 207. Okay, I believe this might be a little bit confusing. This is what I did. This is the post method. So this is where we created this value, right? So we cannot use this again. If we use post method again, it will create a new value rather than updating the same. So since we want to update the same, I'm using the same link, but slash the identifier of the, the identifier of the value that we need to change. And we're going to change the value to this, right? Sphere, red, green, blue, we just change the values. So if I go and get the value right here, we did not change yet. This is the value that we get with the ID 34, 10, and 20. I go to the put method. So put method is the one that we're going to be using to update, right? So since we are updating it, we need to specify which value that we are updating. So that is why we added the ID right here. And we're just going to be changing the value just like this. Now I'm going to send it. And now you can see that, you did not receive any response. But if you go to get API again and hit send, so this is the previous value. But if I send now you can see that these three values are changed. If I go to Unity over here, you can see that when I click play, the value should be a blue color. Ta-da! Okay, so now how do we update the color using Postman, right? Like we already updated the color, but how do we do it in runtime? So this is where we use a very simple polling method. Polling means, as I told you before, you'll be sending the same request over and over again. So this is not a very good way of handling, right? Because for just one system, that is fine. Imagine you have like thousands of people polling the request again and again to your server. So the server will have like more work to do, because every second, even if this changes the color or not, the server has to like respond the same color or the new color, right? So this is not a better way of handling APIs. If you want to change something from the network, polling is not good, but you can do it. Like you can get values, you can you can get the value, you can just show the colors and everything. But it's better if you can do this, once or twice for the whole application, right? But if you want to real time change something, we can use something called sockets, which is, which even I don't have much experience with. But let's do a very simple polling system so that the same request will be sent over and over again, and we'll update this color. Okay, so I am going to over here. I'm going to start the coroutine. So the coroutine will send the web request and load the colors. But instead of putting it in the start method, I'm going to create a new method, void load colors for open, and there you go. It's a very simple void method. And I'm going to copy this. So I'm going to cut this and paste it here. Right. Now what I'm going to do is in my start method, I'm going to do a small invoke repeating. So invoke repeating usually, it has the capability to run a method within, unless we stop, it has, it will keep on running over and over and over again. Okay, so invoke repeating, open parentheses. Now we need to give this as a string. So I'm going to create a string over here. I'm just going to call it load colors poll. And then the starting time, I don't need any time to start. I'm just going to give 0 to start. And then the repeat rate. So this one, I'm just going to give like 5 seconds. Okay, so then what happens here is that this coroutine, a new coroutine will start every 5 seconds, right? So this is called polling. Cool. All right, so I'm going to save the script and I'm going to go to Unity. Okay, let's see how this works. Now I'm just going to keep both of them. Oops. All right, maybe I can like open up the Postman and keep it right here. I'm going to get the put method so that way I can update this on the run. Anyway, I don't have access to this. Okay, hold on. I'm going to change the size of this. Sad that I cannot resize this properly. Okay, now I'm going to click play. And I'm going to go to the scene view. You can see that every 5 seconds, this will be sending the request. Right, you can see. Sending the web request every 5 seconds. Let me change the value of this. 1. All right, bye. Bye, David. See you soon.
Thanks.
Cool. All right, look at this. Now I change the color and I'm going to send. Now this should be changing the color. There you go. Change the color right there. Okay, so if I change this to 255, 0 and 0 and update, in the next iteration, this is going to be red. There you go. And if I add 255 here and run, now the color is going to be different. There you go. Awesome. Okay, so now you can see that it takes some time. So what you can do is, you can keep on sending the web request over and over again. I'm not going to do that because if I send this super quickly, my quota will be over. I think my quota is now like, almost like half of my quota is over. If I go to my CRUD, and if I hit refresh, you can see that I've used 32 of my 100 requests. So this is a fine way of like getting some data, but you'll be using a lot of requests, right? So it's fine, but so this is why we like rather than polling, we use a socket-based architecture. So that way the server will push to all the clients only if there has been a change. If there has been no changes, the server will not do anything. So there's a bandwidth, we can save the bandwidth only if there is an update then the server will be sending all of the update values to the, to the client. So that is called socket architecture. It's also a client server architecture. It's just that the client will not be requesting the values over and over again. But this is called a polling system, right? Cool. Okay, so now let's see the other way of this, and let's end the session, right? So we did the get method, we did the load colors. So what we can do is we can update the colors as well, right? So, what I did here is that I just use Postman to send the values, to update the values. What I can do is I can use the put method, the same put method, to update the values using, maybe user interfaces over here. Okay, so let me quickly create a UI canvas and add RGB values. So that way I can add RGB values from here and update it there, right? Or is it better? Maybe, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Okay, so what I can do is I'm going to create a canvas UI input field, text mesh pro. Okay, so in my scene view, I'm going to go to 2D mode. There we go. I am going to create 3 of this. 1, 2, 3. This is the second one, and this is the third one. And another UI text. Come here. I'm going to change the color of this to black. So this is going to be red. Green and blue. Cool. Okay, now I'm going to create another button. And I'm going to place it here. So I can set red, green, blue values, and I can click this button and update the values. So let me change this to update. Okay. Cool. So now that we have 1, 2, 3 values and also the update, now it's time for us to create this method so that we can upload the values. Okay, so it's going to be very simple. It's going to be exactly similar to this. We know the identifier. We know we are going to be using a put method. So put method, we're going to update. We can update the values, right? So exactly similar to this, I'm going to create a new IEnumerator, right? So over here, IEnumerator. I'm just going to call update colors. Okay, so just like this, I'm just going to copy this. Okay, so before that, we need to set up the JSON. Now that we are updating the values, we need to create this JSON out of Unity, right? So either you can type this JSON, you can type it, but typing it is, it's not that great. Typing it is not that great. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a bunch of, we're going to create this, we're going to create an instance of this, and also we're going to create an instance of this and apply that to the sphere, right? So first of all, we're going to create a model, and then we're going to create a response data. And then as the sphere of this, we're going to attach that. Okay.
So Indika, just quickly, we're going the opposite direction, basically.
Yeah, we're going the opposite direction. So before we got the values, and now we're going to update the values using Unity, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get it. We have to serialize the JSON and then send it out.
Exactly.
Basically inverse the process.
Correct. That's correct. So, for that, first of all, I'm going to using Unity engine, using TM Pro. I need Text Mesh Pro to, get access to all of these text boxes. So here, I'm just going to say public text mesh TMP input field. So this is going to be, I'm going to call input red. So TMP input field is the input field. I think we can, let me check. Input red dot, yeah, of course, we can get value. So this is an input field, so we can get the value out of the input field. So input red, I'm going to copy this and paste. So input red, input green. And the third one is going to be input blue.
Indika, just to confirm my understanding. So basically, the user will input the numbers on Unity Canvas where you created all the text at TMP Pro, and then
Yes.
you will update the API. That's what it's doing.
Exactly. So we type it and we press the button.
Okay.
The button right here, the
That
update
would
button.
be input. Okay, update.
Yeah.
Button.
So when we press the button, it will start a new coroutine only for the update colors. So I'm going to stop this. I'm going to stop this invoke repeating. So we're not going to be updating the colors of the sphere. Instead, we're going to set the values from the sphere. Sorry, from the UI, and we are going to upload all the data to the cloud. So to upload it, we are going to use this specific identifier, right? So we can do it multiple ways, but I'm just going to show you. Okay, so this is what I'm going to show you. Before using the update way, I'm going to show you how to create new stuff using Unity, and then we are going to use this identifier, and we're going to update the values, right? So now what we did is we just use the get method to get the values. What we're going to do is we're going to push the values. We're going to update the values. Okay, so before updating the values, as I told you, we need to create that JSON, right? So to create that JSON, over here, I'm going to create a, over here, I'm going to create a new model variable. So I'm just going to call it model sphere equals new model. So this is how you create a new model. So what is a model? A model is this, the one that we created, right? So first of all, we need to specify the values of the sphere. So for that, we just created a new sphere, a new model, and I named it sphere. You can name anything that you want, but you have to name it as sphere. Otherwise, not here, but I'll just show you. Okay. So what are the colors? Sphere dot red equals input red dot text, right? So now there's a problem, right? You can see here that sphere.red is an integer, but what we are getting from the text is string. So what we need to do is we need to convert a string to integer. So sometimes, when you are doing these things, you'll have to use some help from other methods. So over here, in order to convert a string to an integer, I can use something called int dot parse, right? So if you don't know how to do how to convert from one to another, just do a Google search and you'll easily be able to find. Now, as an example right here, you can just say C# string to int, and you'll always get the parse method. Look at this, int16.parse. Look at this, int.parse. There are different styles for you to parse as well, so we don't really need to use it. Just type, you can see in dot parse, there are like multiple. So these are like invalid because these are floating variables, sorry, floating values. But if you're an integer, you can just, properly parse it, not parse it to an integer. So this way it will take the input as a string and then parse it to an integer. So just like that, I'm going to copy and paste for green and blue as well. Right. So this is going to be input green. And this one's going to be input blue. Okay. So now we created the model. What we need now is to create a new response data. So this one, I'm just going to call response data equals new response data. Open and close. And here we don't really need to give a value to this ID, right? We don't need this ID. So I'm just going to keep it blank. And I'm going to update the model, right? Which is called sphere. So here I'm going to say data.sphere equals this one right here, sphere. So what I did is first of all, I created this child instance, and then I assigned it to this. I'm not sure how this would work. I think the JSON serialization might be updating this value as well. So this is something that we don't really need. Let's just see how this works. And if this doesn't work properly, let's just remove this. Okay. Right now, you can see that I've created this. So I created an object and I called it sphere. And then I created a response data object, which I called it data. And the sphere inside data, for that I assigned the sphere, which is a model variable that I created, a model object that I created. Okay, now I'm going to say string. So here I created a new string. I'm going to call it request data. It's a name, string request data equals. Now we're going to be using the JSON utility. JSON utility dot to JSON. First of all, we used it to get, we use a string to convert that to an object. Now we are using an object to convert that to JSON, right? So JSON utility dot to JSON. Inside of this, I can give any object. So for the object, I'm just going to give this data object data. So if you debug.log this string, you'll be able to get the request data as a string, a JSON as a string. Okay, so now that we have the request data, it is time for us to use the Unity web request to send it, right? Okay, so sending a JSON is a little bit different than just getting a JSON, because we don't have something. We have something called upload handler, but it's not it's not always valid for sending a JSON. So let's just using open parentheses Unity web request www equals Unity web request dot post. I'll just use post. Instead of update colors, I'm just going to call it add colors, right? Instead of updating colors, I'm adding the colors. Add colors. Unity web request dot post. Open parentheses. Oops. Post, open parentheses. You can see it is taking two values, the URL and the post data, right? So as for the URL, I'm just going to give the URL right here. The second parameter is going to be the request data. So I'm just going to take the request data and assign it here. Okay, so if you put this string right here, it's going to be a little bit trouble. It's going to be, going to be something like this. Doesn't look nice. So what I'm going to do is over here, I'm just going to create a new string. I'm just going to call it URL. This is going to be equal to something which I can use right here. Right? URL, that's it. Okay, so my bad, we cannot use a semicolon here. So open the brackets, open parentheses, and there you go. Okay, so as for the URL, because I'm creating new values, you can see that in Postman, when I'm creating new values, I didn't use another identifier here because I don't want to like individually identify anything. So I'm just going to use this as my URL. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it here. You can see that I don't have the identifier of that specific object, right? Specific object. Cool. Now, you know, exactly similar to this, we can send the web request. So I can just say yield return www.send web request. Okay, so let's test this and see how it works. I cannot guarantee that this works by default because there are some things that we need to change, but let's see. Okay, any questions on this? Anything that you did not get?
I think, Indika, I got everything up to one question. Now, we're sending to the API, the endpoint, it's going to get our new data that we put in from TextMesh Pro, but there's no intermediate save space to the JSON other than the API storing the information under the assumption that the API is going to save it to a file by that info or /info that it's registered to, correct? Like if my mobile app were shut off and the process of it being sent, it doesn't get saved anywhere. Like there's no player pref, there's nothing that's actually saved. Okay, no. All right.
You can, like, you know, if you want to save data to the cloud and if you want to like individually recognize it, you can save this one, this identifier in your player prefs, you know, like this one right here.
Okay.
So you can use this, you can assign, you can like modify this string and you can use this at the end, and this way you can send. So that is fine, you know. We are using a CRUD. So when we are using actual APIs, they have their own ways, right? You know, the API link should be something very different to this. You know, the structure of this should be very different. We're just using the API structure that is given to us through this crud.com, right? Okay, anyway, so let's test this. Before doing this, I need to create the, a method for this, so that way I can, you know, just to make sure, I'm just going to put a debug.log, and I'm going to just say www.download_handler, because you know, even a post method will have like some value that it responds. So I'm just going to just type this in the text. Okay, right. So cool. I'm going to create a new method, quickly create a new method to send the colors. So this is going to be public void add color. Open, close, start coroutine. Start coroutine. So here the coroutine should be add color. Is it called add colors? No, add colors. Okay. So I'm going to use this public method inside Unity. So I'm going to select this button, on click. It's going to be the network manager, color loader, add color. Right. So for the network manager, we need to assign this input red and stuff. So I'm going to drag and drop this, drag and drop this, and drag and drop this. Okay, just to make sure I'm sending a correct one, I'm going to debug.log this data, request data as well. So here I'm just going to debug.log request data, just to make sure that I'm sending. Okay, so this may work or may not work. Let's send and let's see how this works. Okay, I'm going to click play. Right, so this will not update the colors. Right now, it doesn't update the colors because I just removed the polling and it is not sending. And updating this even, sorry, this is not actually updating, right? Even if I said update, I'm using a post method. So if I get everything, without if I get everything like this, I'm getting an array. Right now, you can see that the array responds with this, the last update we have done. So once we click it, and if everything goes well, I should be able to see another value over here, right? So let's set this 34, 54. Oops, that's too much. Okay, I'm clicking update. You can see that it created a proper, look at this. Now you can see that it did not work, and instead you got an error saying unsupported media type, right? Unsupported media type. The problem is, if you look at Postman, you can see right here, we have something called headers, right? And if you go to headers, you will not see many things, but you will not see anything. Most of these are hidden. But if you click it, you can see that we are sending some headers, right? We're sending something called user agent, accept encoding, connection. There are some stuff that we send. So over here, you don't really see the actual headers that we are sending in order for this to work, because we've already set up a JSON right here. You can see there is something called curl. Oh, this is the get method. Sorry, I need to select the post method. And here, you can see that we have something called content type. Sorry, in the Postman, in the post method, we have a header, and the header is called content type. And then we have something called accept. So these headers define some additional parameters of what we are sending, right? So it is not the body. The body is the actual data, but the headers kind of define, certain parameters of our, of our data point that we are sending, right? Oh, sorry, the payload that we are sending. So payload has, over here you can see that this says application JSON, right? So we need to manually set these values, right? So as an example, we need to set these, we need to set these headers. So to do that, over here, and another thing is that I saw that it has automatically added an empty ID. So this is going to be a little bit troublesome for us, right? Over here, it's going to be a little bit trouble. So what I can do is, I can remove the ID from my response data, because ID is not something that we create. It's something that we get, and sometimes it's not very important. So for the moment, I'm just going to comment it out, because identifier is something that is automatically generated from the backend. Okay, so here in my add colors, before sending this, year return www.sendWithRequest, we're going to set an header. We're going to set a header to this www. So here I'm just going to say www dot let me see. There you go. Set request header. Set request header. Open parentheses. You can see that it is taking 2 string values. So if you look at Postman, these are the 2 things that we're going to be setting: content type and accept. So I'm just going to copy content type. And here I'm going to give a string, content type, comma, another string. The value of that is going to be application JSON. So let me copy this and paste it right here. So here we set the header. Again, I'm just going to copy this and paste. And then there's another one called accept. So I'll be accepting whatever that we have here, star, hash, star. So that means it's accepting anything. Accept this. So, if you don't say, if you say application.json, it will only accept JSONs, as the response. Okay, so we're sending application JSON as the content type, right? So let's see how this works, right? Like with JSON, there are always there are issues, but let's see. Okay, I'm gonna go back to Unity. Okay, I need to play this again. Okay, I'm gonna give 12, 32, update. Aha, there is an issue. We're sending sphere red 23, green 23, blue 34. Unexpected character encountered while passing. That is strange. Unexpected error encountered while passing value this. Path line 0, position 0. That's strange. It's pretty much the same thing. You have sphere, red, green, blue. What did we do wrong? What did we do wrong? when you're working with APIs, so this is a little bit common. Most probably we might have been sending something else. Okay, just give me a second. I'm just going to there's always trouble with sending JSONs, because like the Unity web request, the standard post, it doesn't use JSON. Instead, you use something called form data. Form data is another way of sending requests. For example, instead of using row, we can send form data. So here we can set key value, but that doesn't allow us to create a proper structure like a JSON. It's going to be a flat structure, like a flat JSON. So we cannot do that. Instead, we should be using something like this, and it should support it as well. So let's see. Unity web request post JSON. Posting row JSON. Okay, there you go. No, this is really old. It's an old way. Aha, there you go. So this is it. Okay, so my bad. So this is what we need to do. So we get the post data, but we need to set it up as a set of bytes in the upload handler, just like how we use the download handler to set it up. Okay, so let's use that way. So rather than just sending request data like this, before sending the web request, before assigning this, we need to create the upload handler. Unity web request URL post. Is this the correct way? Okay, so there are multiple ways that we can do. So this is a string post data. Then we can see www form. This is called multi-part form section, form fields. Again, another post data. Okay, I think this doesn't, this using way might not work properly. So instead, maybe we can do like this, using www equals new Unity web request. Here, this is going to be the URL. And then the second one is going to be the post method. So this is also another way of creating the Unity web request. So, in the get method, this is how we created the Unity web request, like directly created it right there. But in this case, we cannot do that. In this case, we need to create this and we need to like set the request header. We set the request header as well. Now we need to modify the upload handler. So I'm just going to say www.upload handler, right? Upload handler equals new upload handler. There is something called upload handler row. Now in this, you can see that it is requesting a byte array. So, as I told you, like sending a JSON is a tedious task. So we need to send a byte array. So now how do we get a byte array? So to get a byte array, we need to create a byte array. So I'm just going to create a new byte, BYTE. Don't worry about this, byte array is something like a set of strings in bytes that we cannot read, right? But, this can handle, C# can handle everything. So I'm just gonna create a new byte section. I'm just gonna call it post bytes equal to, so we already have the text right here, request data, right? So we're gonna be using this request data to this post bytes. So to do this, we need to use system.text.encoding .utf8.getBytes. Just memorize this. It's just one way of converting a string into a byte array. Open request data. Right. So now we have a byte array, and now we can use the upload handler to to request this post bytes. Okay, so let me update here. So here we convert the JSON to byte array. And here we add the byte array to upload handler. Okay, cool. So now that we have header set up, we have the byte array set up, we have the upload handler set up, that's fine. Cool. Let's see how this works. I'm still not sure, but let's see. Okay, I'm gonna go to Unity. I'm gonna click play. Okay, what is this? Null reference exception 86. Color load.cs 86. Okay, let's see in Postman what do we have here. I'm just gonna go to get and click send. Okay, look at this. So so over here you can see that we have the it has sent the request, but the error that we got here is because of this, because the download handler is not set up. This way, because we're using this way, we created our own Unity web request. So this way we don't have the download handler set up. So over here, we need to create a download handler as well. It's something very simple. So we can just say www.download handler equals new download handler. It's a general purpose buffer. So you can just create a new download handler like this. Okay, so here, I think now this will stop giving us errors. So we are creating a new download. Okay, all right, so that's a lot. You can see that this is a different way. What we did is using Unity Web Request, and here we immediately created something like this, right? Can you put a code? Yes, I will do this. So we immediately created this get method. So this way, Unity Web Request itself has like the download handler created automatically. But in this way, we created our own web request, and we defined that it's going to be a post web request. So we have like a bunch of variables, bunch of values that we need to set up. Nice. Okay, so now that we have done that, let's see if we can send another web request. Ta-da, ta-da. Cool, there you go. You can see now that we have the web request, it sends the data, and now we get the data. Okay, you can see that we have a new identifier as well. So now we did this 3 times. Over here, if I send this again, you can see that I have 3 values, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You know what I can do? I don't think that we have time today. I can create, and based on the array, you can see that the array has 1, 2, 3 values. I can iterate through an array of this, and I can create random objects, and I can place them in my scene, right? So I'm not going to do this. It might take some time, but let's try to do the update thing. It's going to be the same way as post. It's going to be exactly the same. So let me go here. I'm going to copy this whole IO enumerator, right? And I'm going to put it right here. And here I'm just going to change this to update colors. Update colors. And as for the URL, it's going to be this one, right? Because we're going to be updating only one value here. So I'm going to paste this. So instead of post, this is going to be put. Hopefully that's it, right? Okay, so I'm going to create another method, right? So instead of adding color, so this is going to be something for update color. And this one, it's going to be update colors. Sorry, I did this a little bit quicker because, it's pretty much the same, because you're updating a JSON rather than using the post method. You'll be using the put method with that specific value. Okay, so right now you can see that if I get the value only, it's 34, 213. Sorry, this is the new update, 255, 23, and 0. Let's see whether we can change it. I'm going to change the method of this. So before it used to be add color. Now this is going to be update color. Okay, I'm going to click play. 45, 12, again 45, and update. And there you go. So you do not get any value, but 45, 12, and 45 is the value that we sent. Right now you can see that it's 22, 55, 23, but if I send it again, now you can see that the values are updated. So that way you can update the values as well. Cool. All right. So, this is like the very basics. It's like, it's very basic of, creating enumerators, creating, things like this. If you are using a lot of web requests, it is better to create one one method to send all the requests. Maybe I can do another develop session to to talk about some best practices of using this. It's like really code heavy. It's going to be really code heavy, but I need you to do this over and over again. So you'll get a very clear understanding about what happens with sending web requests. You can see we use get method, we use the post method, and we use the put method. So we use all three methods, two different ways. Sending is a little bit challenging rather than getting, because we are sending a JSON, right? So that depends, right? So whatever the API that you work with, we need to adhere to that API. So this is just one way, and you might be getting different methods. Let alone we did not talk about authentication. So authentication is something else, right? So we did not authenticate. So these are public APIs. We can send and get values, but authentication means some of the values you cannot get before authentication, right? So what happens there is that, just to give you a very small idea, so imagine this is me, right? And this is the system. So I'm talking to the system. Hey, give me what is it? Give me some public data, right? Let's just say /public, blah 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 /public, and the server is like, all right, there you go. This is your data. That's fine. And now again, I'm sending a request. Hey, give me the data of JSON. Give me JSON's data, right? And the server is like, no, you're not JSON, right? Are you JSON? No, you're not JSON. So I'm not giving you any data. Nope, right? So now JSON comes in, right? And JSON also asks, hey, give me data of JSON. The server is like, hey, are you JSON? Are you JSON? No, I'm not giving you data, because even JSON is not authenticated. So now what JSON does is JSON sends a login request, blah 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 /login, right? And with this request, let's just imagine that this is a this is a post method, right? So inside the post method, JSON sends his username and the password, right? Password, Okay, now the server has the username and the password. It checks whether the password is correct. And if it is correct, the server will send you something called a token. So this token usually consists of, use some of the user data, not all the data, some, authentication related user data. And this token is public, it's not public. It shouldn't be public, but you receive the token and, the device kind of saves the token somewhere, maybe in player prefs or something. It is saved in, if you log into a web application, the token is saved in a, what do you call it? The token is saved in, the token is saved in cookies, right? So if so that's why when you clear cookies in some applications, you have to log in again, right? So now if you have a token, then you'll be sending the JSON's data request along with the token in the header. We talk about the header, right? Content type, accept type, those things are headers. So in the header, JSON is sending the token. So this way, the server can recognize that you're JSON, and based on that, it will send you all the data. So that is how the authentication happens. So these things are known as stateless. You'll be sending data and the server will be responding some data, and you'll be using that data to request some other data, right? So that is how it works. So, so that's how everything works. I don't think I have any API to show you right now to get some token. So usually these tokens are really huge. Some of these tokens are known as JSON Web Tokens, or known as JWT. sorry, not JSON, Java Web. Oh, JSON Web Token. There's another one called Java Web Tokens. So this is a way. Now, for an example, a token looks like this, right? It's an encoded token. It looks like this. You can see that, you can even, see some values of that token. See, John Doe, some values, blah, blah, blah. I think it's a talk for another day. Because I don't have any API to show you how to work with. Maybe one day if I work on an API, we can see how we can create a way to log in using a password system in Unity. So username, password, you log in, and then you'll be able to get some value. So without logging, you'll be not able to get it, right? So to do everything, just to do the whole thing, learn about it, see how you can use get method, post method, and things in different ways. Today we use this way, right? Today we use this. You can extend this. You can increase the number of, you can increase the JSON. See how you can, expand the JSON into multiple layers and how to combine all of them to just one JSON and see how to, just explore, do experiments. This is just one thing. Maybe you can, I just added a sphere. Maybe add like multiple objects, right? Change the position. Like you can create a vector3 variable and, just use X, Y, and Z and see how you can like modify the position and spawn objects in different places. See what you can do. All right, so that is pretty much it for today. I know it's a little bit code heavy. I will upload the code. So this is the code. I'll upload it in the in Discord. Thank you very much for joining. I know Bernice, you joined at the very last moment. You might have to watch the recording again. Yeah. Cool. Anyway, thank you very much for joining. I'll share the recording. It might take a little while to upload because I'll be uploading it to YouTube. So it might take a while. If you have any questions on this, feel free to send me a message.
Indika, will you be doing more API course work?
Yeah. I will
okay,
be.
good.
I will
All
be.
right.
I will be, but next week I might not be. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Let's just see. I will be doing a lot of API related stuff.
Great. Awesome.
Awesome. Okay. Have a nice day, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.